Well, Liz Cheney has unique information that could be of interest to Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, according to a report about her new book titled Oath and Honor, which will be published next week and which the author will discuss Monday night at 9 p.m. in Liz Cheney's very first interview with Rachel Maddow right here on MSNBC. CNN has obtained a copy of the book and quotes an excerpt that says Donald Trump knew that he lost the presidential election 2 days after the presidential election. Liz Cheney reveals this information in a conversation she had at the time with Kevin McCarthy. He knows it's over, McCarthy said. According to the book, he needs to go through all the stages of grief. That makes Kevin McCarthy a witness who could testify to Donald Trump's true state of mind about the election. He knows it's over, McCarthy told Liz Cheney 2 days after the presidential election in 2020. Last night, Donald Trump's lawyers filed a massive discovery request in the case of United States of America versus Donald J. Trump, in which Donald Trump is accused of crimes leading up to and on January 6th in his attempt to overturn that election. In their filing, the Trump criminal defense lawyers say that prosecutors, quote, cannot blame President Trump for public discord and distrust of the 2020 election results. Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyers insist that it was perfectly reasonable for Donald Trump to believe that there was election fraud, no matter how many times he was told by his own attorney general and White House lawyers that there was no election fraud. And now comes Kevin McCarthy saying he knows it's over 2 days after the presidential election. The Trump criminal defense lawyers' request for discovery demands they're demanding documents from all over the federal government. One of the many claims for discovery that the Trump lawyers make is, quote, President Trump is entitled to all information regarding undercover agents and individuals acting at the direction of official authorities at the Capitol on January 6th, because it suggests that there were adequate controls in place and that the violence at issue resulted from a failure of those controls and/or failed sting operations rather than any directions from President Trump. Directions from President Trump. Among the many problems for the Trump lawyers in that point is that it ignores the fact that once the attack was underway, there were absolutely no directions from Donald Trump to any of the governmental forces under his command to stop the attack on the Capitol. Not one word in any of the Trump lawyers' voluminous pleadings in this case has ever attempted to explain why Donald Trump did absolutely nothing to stop the attack on the Capitol that he watched on TV, and why it was Vice President Pence who simply took over the role of commander-in-chief from his hiding place in the Capitol to communicate with congressional leaders about the attack and Defense Department officials about how to regain control of the Capitol building. Donald Trump completely surrendered the presidency during the attack on the Capitol. That inaction by Donald Trump, that Liz Cheney calls dereliction of duty during the attack on the Capitol, is part of the criminal charge against Donald Trump by Jack Smith in this case. The Trump discovery request also asks for information about Mike Pence that appears completely irrelevant to the attack on the Capitol on January 6th and Donald Trump's attempt to get Mike Pence to violate the law on January 6th. Those attempts are described by Jack Smith in the indictment against Donald Trump. The Trump discovery request asks for, quote, evidence relating to unauthorized retention of classified documents by Vice President Mike Pence. The potential criminal charges faced by Vice President Pence gave him an incentive to curry favor with authorities by providing information that is consistent with the Biden administration's preferred and false narrative regarding this case. Jack Smith's team has until December 11th to respond to that Trump discovery request. Judge Chutkan, ruling in this case already, has found that Donald Trump's latest discovery request was, quote, a fishing expedition, and she denied his request. Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyers' fear of Mike Pence as a potential witness has been fueled by new reporting of what Mike Pence actually told Special Prosecutor Jack Smith's prosecution team earlier this year. ABC News is reporting, quote, in his interviews with Smith's team, Pence recalled a meeting he had alone with Trump inside the Oval Office on December 21st, 2020. When Trump privately asked Pence what they should do, Pence said he told the then president that if nothing changed, you should simply accept the results, you should take a bow, travel the country to thank supporters, and then run again if you want. And I'll never forget, he pointed at me as if to say, that's worth thinking about. And he walked away, Pence recalled to investigators, sources said. ABC News is also reporting that Mike Pence's notes turned over to prosecutors revealed these lines from Christmas Eve 2020. Not feeling like I should attend electoral count, Pence wrote in his notes in late December. Too many questions, too many doubts, too hurtful to my friend. Therefore, I'm not going to participate in certification of election. Then, sitting across the table from his son, a Marine, while on vacation in Colorado, his son said to him, Dad, you took the same oath I took. It was an oath to support and defend the Constitution, Pence recalled to Smith's investigators, sources said. That's when Pence decided he would be at the Capitol on January 6th, after all, according to the sources.